currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of election, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition. It is April 11th, 2014, the Friday edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am back live again tonight. Yes, I had to take last night off as an emergency. As I was chatting with my guest and telling him about right before we came on, I had a severe allergic reaction yesterday, and it put me in the hospital. So it pretty much took me out of the game for the whole day yesterday. It was actually a very scary thing. Make sure you know what you're allergic to. Make sure your doctor knows what you're allergic to. I know it's hard to find out. There are allergy tests. Look into it. I'm telling you, it was really, really, really scary yesterday. When I woke up, my body was in anaphylaxis, and it was not good. And I ended up going to the hospital. And there was a chance. I mean, they were honest with me. I mean, my throat was closing up and everything. And I've had this happen before. And there was a chance that it could have killed me. So yesterday was a pretty interesting day, to say the least. Anyway, that's where I was, just in case anybody was wondering why out of nowhere I put a rebroad on yesterday and I threw it up on Facebook and in the chat really quick, but I really didn't let anybody. There was really no warning because, as I said, I really didn't have any idea that was going to happen. So that's where I was yesterday, but I'm okay, back better than ever, good to go. And tonight, I was not going to miss tonight. It didn't matter if I was if I had to take an IV of Benadryl and adrenaline shots. I was going to be live tonight because I had a very special guest scheduled tonight, and I was not going to reschedule this broadcast. No, sir. So without further ado, let's get right into it with my guest, my good friend, occult specialist extraordinaire, Mr. Mark Passio. Mark, welcome back to the broadcast.
Popeye, as always, it's great to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me back.
And I should actually say occulted information specialist. That's what I like to call you.
There you go.
You're the occulted information specialist, because occult really means just hidden. So hidden information specialist, that would be Mark. You ever want to know any secret hidden things going on, especially the things that the powers that shouldn't be believe? Mark's the place to go. And if you haven't heard him before, after tonight, you'll see why. So Mark, before we get into it, I want you to shamelessly plug your website, your Facebook, Twitter, and anything else.
Sure. My main website is whatonearthishappening.com. There's a huge body of information there, mostly in the form of audio in the podcast section. That's the place that I tell people, really, if you want to go on the deep journey, to begin there and listen to the podcasts in order at your own pace. Not out of order. Don't skip around. Go back to number one and listen in order forward. At your own pace, and if you put that investment of time and attention, your entire worldview will change and will come into a state of a high level of awareness regarding what's really taking place in our world and what the causal factors that are driving that condition are. That's the thing that I believe sets my work apart, is that I delve into the causal factors, whereas many other people focus on just the symptoms. If we don't understand the nature of a problem, we're not in an empowered position to solve that problem. So what I like to look at myself and my work as is I like to consider myself a de-occultist of hidden information, one who is bringing that hidden information out into the open so that all may see and recognize it, because we all know the reason that this information is hidden, or that we are dissuaded from looking into matters that have been occulted from our view, is that when knowledge is hidden by the certain small group of people who have hidden that knowledge and who hold it themselves and are hiding it from the vast majority, the masses of people, then you have a power differential that gets created through that knowledge differential. See, knowledge isn't power in and of itself, but applied knowledge is power. So the people who hold that knowledge and are in an active position to do something with it, to use it to their benefit, they're creating a differential in power through that differential in knowledge that they hold. And that's why they want to keep people ignorant of these causal factors, and that's why they want to keep people ignorant of what the information that we are talking about of as the occult, the knowledge of how the human consciousness works, how the human psyche operates, and then the knowledge of natural law, the knowledge of large systems, how systems work in their totality, the macrocosmic world, you might say, the laws of nature. So if you hide that information, you hold back its actual accurate understanding, its workings from people, and you keep them in a position of ignorance, of course, you're always going to be at a tactical advantage over them regarding what happens in the day-to-day world. And that is the reason that that knowledge has been occulted.
All right, and there's only a certain small few individual people that are allowed to have access to this knowledge, and that's why they have quote-unquote power. It's not really any superpower or anything. It's just that they have access to information that the general public does not, and that gives them an advantage. It's like insider trading on Wall Street, but on a huge grand scale with the whole world, and universal law and understanding how things actually work. That's basically what it is. Dude, your work is amazing. Again, ladies and gentlemen, Mark's a very good friend of mine. I've done tons of broadcasts with him over the years on this stuff. And Mark was one of the places that I went to learn about a lot of this stuff years ago. And over the years, I still learn. I learn something new every day. And that's why I wanted to get him on, because I wanted to pick his brain about a few things. There's a few topics I want to go over. First thing, we'll get right into, because it's April. Right, so it's that time of year, Mark, where the powers that shouldn't be like to do certain things, have certain events transpire. Over the years, you've seen things like Waco, the Boston Marathon bombing, the Titanic sunk around the same time period. I couldn't make any of this stuff up. If you look through time, it's like on this, this time period in April. There's this about a week-long period of time where it's amazing that all these bad things seem to happen. And from my research, and of course I've talked about this with you before, but I'll let you get into it in detail. From my research, I've seen that it coincides with these holidays, or whatever you want to call it, these special days to these people that they worship Satan, or they're Satanist, whatever you want to call them. Maybe, I've seen research that I've heard incantations and stuff where they're also invoking the Anunnaki at the same time that they're trying to invoke Set. So an understanding of what they're actually worshiping is in and of itself its own investigation. But let's just say, for layman's terms, make it easy, we'll call them Satanists or whatever. And it's around this time period that these events seem to happen. And you see this thing going on out there with this rancher where all the feds are rounding up and they're saying, oh, it's another Waco. It's right around this time period.
Yep.
It's in April. Is this a coincidence? Do you think
Absolutely not. No such thing. Definitely not a coincidence. It coincides with a lot of the dark occult belief systems. And the first thing we have to put on the line here is that You don't need to believe what they believe, ladies and gentlemen. You know, when you try to explain this to people, one of the first forms of resistance that you hear out of people's mouths is something to the effect of, well, I don't believe in that nonsense. I don't believe in that garbage. Well, who the hell cares whether you believe in it or not, quite frankly? You know, I mean, that's the most ridiculous, asinine, and arrogant thing that you could possibly say. Okay, anybody who's thinking that is a child, as far as I'm concerned, okay? Because just think about how stupid this sounds, right? This is like saying, well, I don't believe in radical Islam, so nothing that any radical Islamic fundamentalist could possibly do can ever possibly affect me. I don't believe in radical fundamentalist Christianity, but radical fundamentalist Christians might attack an abortion clinic and I might get caught in the crossfire. Do I need to believe in their radical, out-of-control belief system for it to possibly affect me, for it to possibly affect my life, for it to possibly affect people I care about? Absolutely not. I don't need to believe in it. They believe in it, and they are willing to act upon their belief system. So why would it require anybody else's belief? That's my first question to people. When they hear information they don't understand or that upsets them or that scares them, the first reaction they'll usually have is, well, I don't believe in that, so it can't be true. It can't actually be what's really going on. I mean, like I said, it's an attitude of a 2-year-old, you know? We have to understand what we believe has nothing to do with what these people believe. And they're willing to act on their belief system because they're very, very powerful, influential people currently calling the shots in our world. And they have strange, twisted, sick, perverted religious belief systems that they believe and they act upon. So what this season that I talk about in my work is, it's called the season of sacrifice. People think that blood rituals and human sacrifice stopped long ago in the ancient world, like people stopped doing that. Nothing could be further from the truth, ladies and gentlemen. Blood rituals and human sacrifice continues on into the present day. It just takes different forms. People are no longer marched up the side of a pyramid, of a step pyramid, and then ritually sacrificed with an obsidian blade, you know? They're no longer tied down to a ritualistic stone altar and like set ablaze. It doesn't happen that way anymore. Now, you know, groups of people get bombed, okay? You know, buildings get demolished. People get shot up in schools. That's the modern form of human sacrifice. That's how it works in the modern day. You know, we're not in the Stone Ages anymore, you know, where it was done differently in a huge, you know, ceremonial extravaganza. Now it's done out in the open for the whole world to see through the controlled media. So it can traumatize, its ripples of trauma can propagate throughout the entire world, not just on a local level as it was in the past. So these modern occult sacrifice rituals are even more effective than they used to be in the ancient past. And let me just set up what this season is about. When you're talking about what these psychopaths who are in control, these dark occultists, what they worship, the real thing that they're worshiping is the sun. And the sun is a symbol. It's a symbol for knowledge, light. Light to them means knowledge. Okay? That's why they consider themselves those who are illuminated. I hate the term Illuminati because it suggests that these people are somehow illuminated or enlightened. They're nothing of the kind. They're sick, twisted, absolutely insane psychopath, pedophile eugenicists. There's nothing enlightened about that condition. But do they have knowledge? Yes. Do they use that knowledge in the right way, in the way that it's intended to be used for the uplift of humanity? Absolutely not. They use it for their own betterment at the expense of everybody else because they're holding that knowledge back from others or dissuading others from looking into it so that they can come out on top. Like I said, a differential in knowledge creates a differential in power. So their symbol is the sun, but you can't look at it as the true light. See, what you really have to look at the dark occultists, the dark, knowledgeable, or quote illuminated individuals, the darkly illuminated ones. See, if I'm going to use the term Illuminati, I'll use the term dark Illuminati, those who are darkly illuminated. That means they have knowledge, yes, but are they using knowledge for the purpose it's intended to be used? Toward the will of all creation, for the uplift of consciousness and the evolution of beings in this universe? No. They use it for the exact opposite reason. So their symbol has always been throughout their history of operations, the dark sun. It's the black sun. If you even look at modern dark occultic orders that operated, let's say, during the World War II era period of human history, back when the Nazis were in control of Europe in the 1940s, okay? They had a secret society within the Nazi party, within their whole movement. It was called the Schutzstaffel, the SS. It was the protection squadron, okay? The actual secret police, you could say, that operated, and the secret elite, of their society. And it was like a secret society. Okay, P.S. people knew about it, but you had to have certain blood to get into it. You had to, be up to a certain standard when it came to following orders and respecting their sick, twisted authority. Okay, and inside the Schutzstaffel, inside the SS, there was another secret order. It was a secret society within that secret society. It was called Die Schwarzsonne, which means the Black Sun. Look this up, okay? It operated at Wewelsburg. Wewelsburg was where Himmler essentially initiated the elite of the SS at the Wewelsburg Castle, all right? And this was where the actual inner occult order of the Nazi Party was operating. And they called themselves the Black Sun. It's part of an ancient tradition. You look at things like Skull and Bones. It's another one of these dark solar cults. It's all about the sun, but it's about the dark sun, the black sun. Okay? So it's the order of the black sun, the darkly illuminated ones. That's what we have to understand them as. They're a solar cult, and the sun represents knowledge to them, but it represents knowledge being used as a weapon to control others in their ignorance. If you can keep people in ignorance, you can control them with the knowledge you understand about the human psyche and the laws of nature. Okay? So that's a setup for this. Now, what this season of sacrifice is all about is, since they are the worshipers of the sun, this dark solar cult, okay, they looked in the ancient world as the year as having four basic components, four quadrants, the four seasons. We do today too. But what they would do is they would literally draw the year as a circle, and it would comprise the 12 houses of the zodiac within this circle. If you have a 360-degree circle, you break the circle into 12 houses, or 12 equal components, 72 degrees each. Okay. And you have, it wouldn't be 72 degrees each. It would be 90 degrees per quadrant. Then you have 30 degrees each, because you have three houses within each season. So you have 30 degrees within each house and 12 houses for a total of 360 degrees. And they would break this into four quadrants separated by the equinoxes and the solstices. Okay. So you have to look at this as forming a huge cross on the circle. And then the sun would be placed on that cross. So you can see here's more astrotheological religious symbolism. The sun of God on the cross of the zodiac. God's sun, our star, okay? The sun, soul, all right? That gives life to the earth, and all life upon the earth isn't possible without the light, the warmth, the energy of our sun, our star, okay? And they placed that on the cross of the zodiac. And then the two top seasons of the zodiac were spring and summer. If you look at just a half circle, you would have spring at the upper left quadrant of the quartered circle, and summer at the upper right quadrant of this quartered circle. So you'd have those two seasons together form 180 degrees of that circle at the top of the zodiacal wheel, the zodiacal circle. So this season is when these two seasons are when the sun is actually shining its rays directly upon the northern hemisphere of the earth. In other words, the sun is above the equator. It's above the 0 degree line of latitude that goes around the equator of the earth. So for half the year, the sun is shining directly on the northern hemisphere. This is due to the tilt of the earth on its rotational axis. Okay, as the earth orbits around our star, the sun, it is actually tilted with respect to its plane of orbit at about a 23.5 degree, a 23.5 degree angle. This is what creates our seasons as the earth goes around the sun. When it is pointed away from, directly away from the sun is at a 23.5 degree south angle. It's in the southern hemisphere. This is the lowest point of the sun's power with respect to the northern hemisphere, okay? Because the earth is actually pointed away from the sun at that time of the year. And that's called the winter solstice. Then the other solstice is the summer solstice. That's when the earth is actually pointed toward the sun with respect to its rotational axis around its plane of orbit around the sun. And it's at a 23.5 degree northerly angle. The sun is at the summer solstice, the high point of the sun during the course of a year. So the sun just keeps making this trek of, it's at its high point at the summer solstice, then it goes down to the equinox, the fall equinox, then at the winter solstice, it's at its low point of power at 23.5 degree south latitude, and then it just keeps repeating that. It goes back up to the spring solstice, spring equinox, and then it goes back up to its high point of power at the summer solstice again. That's the sun's trek during the course of a year, and this was tracked by the zodiac. It was tracked by the constellation of stars that the sun rose in front of each morning. That's how you could say that the sun is in a particular house when it's rising on the eastern horizon in front of a grouping of stars called a constellation that represents one of the houses of the zodiac. So to go back to this model of the zodiac, half of the year, spring and summer, those two seasons, that 6-month period, was the time of the year when the sun is in the northern hemisphere. Okay, it's above the 0 degree line, the equator. And then the other half of the year, it's in the southern hemisphere. That would be the autumn season and the winter season. So the ancients really looked at there was only really 2 seasons. They did break it into quadrants of 4, but they looked at the 2 top quadrants formed 1 season and the 2 bottom quadrants formed a 2nd season. And those seasons could be just considered the season of light and the season of darkness. The season when the sun was in the northern hemisphere, in which time you could plant and grow crops to sustain you throughout the rest of the year. Because crops really don't grow abundantly or well in the other 2 seasons, fall or autumn and winter, particularly winter. So they called those 2 seasons the season of darkness or the season of death. And conversely, the upper portion of the zodiac, the spring and the summer, was considered the season of light or the season of life, because that's when plants would grow because the sun favored the northern hemisphere. And the reason it's centered around the northern hemisphere, ladies and gentlemen, is because the vast majority of human life exists in the northern hemisphere. If you just separate the landmass of Earth and just look at the landmass with respect to the equator of the Earth, very little bit of the landmass of planet Earth is actually situated in the southern hemisphere. Therefore, only a very small amount, probably around 20% or less of the human population, is centered in the southern hemisphere of the Earth. And I'm guesstimating that number. It's approximately that. So the ancients saw the year as really being broken down into 2 seasons. One where the sun favored the Earth in the northern hemisphere and allowed crops to grow in abundance. And one season where there was no abundant growing of crops because the sun was not favoring the northern hemisphere during that 6-month period. Very simple when we look at it in these terms. So if we look at the growing season or the season of life, the season of light, okay, as having these 2 quadrants, okay, spring and summer seasons, all of the planting for any crops that are going to sustain life throughout the 6-month period of darkness and death, the fall and winter season, okay, would need to be done as early as possible during the season of life and light. It makes sense, right? You're going to plant your crops. You're going to do it as early as possible when the sun is beginning to favor the northern hemisphere and shine its light onto the northern hemisphere of the earth. Okay, because that's when it's going to activate those seeds and they're going to eventually grow. And then you're going to have a harvest around midsummer sometime, or possibly even earlier. And then that's going to allow you to sustain yourself during most of the rest of the year when plants and crops are not going to grow. Okay. And food's going to be scarce. And then you're going to have to dig in to survive the winter. So they had a belief in the ancient world that if they were going to if they were going to be favored by the sun and the earth, which they considered entities, they considered living beings. Okay. They considered the sun their god. All right. If they were going to be favored by the sun, they would have to offer some form of a sacrifice during the first part of spring, namely the first half of spring. This is why whenever any blood sacrifices in the ancient world were offered to the sun and to the earth for a bountiful harvest, a bountiful growing and abundance of crops that would come later during the harvest season, they would always do it during the first half of spring.
Mark, I'm going to cut us off. I'm going to cut us off because the break is sneaking up. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. We're back in 3 short, quick minutes. When we do, we're going to pick up right here. Do not leave. Stay tuned. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Mark Passio and myself have been discussing the season of sacrifice. And when we got cut off, Mark was going right into, he just finished up, but I had to stop him, and I want him to rewind a second, maybe about a minute, and go over that again, because he was explaining to everybody why this time of year coincides with all of these sacrifices, these blood sacrifices that you see. And he was explaining how it's all connected to the ancient world. And if you think that the ancient world isn't connected to now, you're wrong. We were laughing during the break. The only thing that's really different is we have computers and smartphones and stuff. That's it. They still do barbaric things. It's the same evil psychopaths in power. Nothing's really changed. Our perception has, because we think we're so sophisticated, right, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, we think this stuff doesn't go on anymore. It just has taken a different form. But the same cults that have run the world still run the world today. They're just much better hidden because they've convinced people pretty effectively that they don't even exist. Yet there's symbolisms all around us. Their signature is on everything. It's all there, hidden in plain sight, for people who are conscious enough to see, who want to come out of their slumber and stop pretending that they're free and that this is such a wonderful place and it's somehow, evolving into a better world,
Yeah, I don't see that.
It can do that, but we're a long way from it. We have to wake up, folks. We have to understand we need to put this to a rest. We need to put this cult down at some point. We have to take our power back from it and tell them that we're not their slaves, and they're not going to do these rituals that they've been doing unchallenged. They've gotten away with it unchallenged because of our ignorance, But, more people are waking up to it and seeing the pattern, especially around this time of the year. I get lots of emails, people telling me, everything you're telling me, it's been confirmed with everything that's going on. It's only about seeing patterns, and these patterns are really there. They're not imagined patterns, and they come from knowledge about these people's belief systems and how they work and how they have worked since the ancient world. So, people need to look into this stuff. They look into it, they'll understand what I'm telling them is accurate. I'm not making any of it up. You could research it all yourself. It's all there. It's not really hidden. It's not really occulted. It's just they've dissuaded a lot of people who think that they're, again, so smart and sophisticated and, things are so evolved from how they were in the ancient world that, no, none of this is real. None of this is happening. They've just dissuaded you from looking into that knowledge. If you can make people not even want knowledge, you don't have to hide it deliberately from them. Why go through all the trouble of having to confiscate it and hide it and kill anybody who has access to it, when you could just say, oh, there's nothing to that, nothing to see here, folks. And then it's all right out there in plain sight, but nobody understands it because they don't understand how these symbols work. They don't understand how their belief system works. Once you understand that, you could see their signature everywhere. So I'll go back into why they performed these sacrifices at the time of the year that they did. It's because at the beginning of spring would be the time that the sun has risen from the tomb of the southern hemisphere, the place of death and darkness, okay, when it is not favoring the northern hemisphere, where the majority of the population of Earth live, and the majority of the land mass that is the carrying capacity for the Earth, because that's where crops grow. Okay, so when it would emerge from its, quote, tomb or its place of death, the sun, God's sun, would emerge from its tomb of the southern hemisphere into the northern hemisphere. That was the time to offer some sort of a sacrifice to this entity so that you would appease it, you would please it, and then it would shine its rays down upon the earth, and that would connect with the mother, the earth. Okay, and then you'd have a bountiful planting season, which would lead to a bountiful harvest. And then you and your society and your people would be sustained throughout the season of death. The dark period of the year where crops did not grow. Okay, and then you would survive till the rising of the sun again the next year at the spring equinox. So the time period that they did this was the first half of spring. See, they celebrated the halfway points of the season. Again, the cross or the quadrant delineation points of the zodiac are the equinoxes and the solstices. They form the cross of the zodiac. But there was a second cross. It was the midpoints of each one of the seasons. This is where a major celebration would be conducted in the ancient world by different, traditions, occult traditions, pagan traditions, religious traditions, you name it. But they always celebrated during the midpoints of the seasons. It was kind of like a marker point, like we're halfway through this time period. Okay, so let's have a celebration to reflect on the past and look forward to the future. The main celebration, however, was the midpoint of spring. This was the highest holy day on the ancient occult calendar. Okay? It still is the high holy day of the modern occult calendar. It's called May Day, or the midpoint of spring, and in the modern day it has been called Walpurgisnacht. Walpurgisnacht is spelled Walpurgisnacht, Walpurgisnacht. And it means the night of Walpurgis, or Saint Walpurgis. It's a German saint. So in the ancient world, this was simply referred to as the midpoint of spring, the fertility rites of spring, May Day, a little bit more recently, and in the modern occult season, Walpurgisnacht. This was referred to as one of the four major Sabbats. Again, the lesser four major, the lesser of the Sabbats. There were four lesser Sabbats, and they were the solstices and the equinoxes. But they had major Sabbats, or celebrations, or holidays, holy days, if you will. And the most prominent among them was May Day, May 1st. This is the midpoint of spring. It is the midpoint of one of the four fixed signs of the zodiac, Taurus. Taurus is the earth sign of the zodiac. So each one of the seasons is ruled by an element: earth, air, water, and fire. Earth rules the season of spring, and its zodiacal symbol is Taurus the bull. Again, an earth symbol. Okay, so the fertility rites of spring were celebrated at May 1st, on May Day. And it was a celebration of life, because this is when things were starting to really come to life, because the sun was starting to favor the northern hemisphere again. Okay? So when life is springing up and plants and flowers are sprouting and growing, and things are starting to look good for humanity again, because it's best friend, the sun, which gives it life and light and energy, is prominently rising in the northern hemisphere, heading toward its high point of power at the summer solstice. This was something to celebrate. And it was a time where, a lot of sex rituals were also held during this time period. Again, it was fertility rites. It was not only about life regarding the sun and the earth, but life regarding human beings. And this is when people were encouraged to essentially propagate their genetics by copulating and having children. So it was a very celebratory time of the year in the ancient calendar, but it was also the time of the year for blood sacrifices. And before this time, again, or the whole half of early spring, okay, the beginning of spring up to the halfway point of spring was considered the time that you would give sacrifices to the sun and the earth, to make a sacrifice. Again, this is the season we have Lent in, is it not? Prior to Easter, okay? Easter happens around this time of the year. It's the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. That's when East Star is celebrated. People don't even just break down the word, real simple. The Eastern Star, Easter. It's named also after Ishtar, a goddess of the ancient occult traditions of Sumer and Babylon. Okay? The Eastern Star is the sun. That's what you're celebrating, the rising up from its tomb, rising out of its tomb and into the northern hemisphere of the earth, of the sun. Okay? It's all astrotheology, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not discounting the words of Jesus. I'm not discounting the philosophical message, the spiritual message, regardless of whether you believe in him as a historical personage or not. And that's not the point. I'm trying to explain astrotheology is the underpinning for this celebration called Easter. Okay? It has nothing to do with a man rising from the dead. It has to do with the sun rising from the season of death. Okay? So that was the first Sabbath. Then the other three Sabbaths were also associated with a respective sign, an elemental sign. The midpoint of summer, which was Lammas Day, August 1st, is ruled by a fire sign, Leo. Okay. Again, think about it. You have the earth being celebrated during spring by the sign Taurus, the fixed point in the middle of spring, the spring season. Then you have the fixed zodiacal house of Leo, the fire sign. Again, this is when the sun is at its high point of power in the middle of summer. So these are around the dog days of summer. Okay. And the sun has become a roaring lion in this season. He's a charging bull in the spring season, charging toward his high point of power at the summer solstice. And then during the summer season, his rays are in full, burst. The lion with its roaring, mane, the lion's mane. That's how the sun was depicted in the summer season. And it's a fire sign. That's when the sun is at its highest point of power. And then what starts to diminish fire is water. When the sun goes back into the season of darkness at the autumn equinox, passing the equator on its way down in power and into the southern hemisphere, the midpoint of the autumn season was a water sign, Scorpio. The sun has now been stung by the venom of the scorpion, and he's now diminishing in his strength. And the water is quenching the fire of the summer season. Okay? And the sun is now making his way down to its lowest point of power, the winter solstice, December 22nd. Now, I'm sorry, just to backtrack briefly. The midpoint of autumn was the Sabbath called Samhain. It's spelled Samhain, not pronounced Samhain, but Samhain in the Druidic tradition. This is, of course, October 31st. This was a time of reflection, a time to reflect upon the season of death and to remember lost loved ones. And that's why it's around the time that we call All Hallows Eve. It means all souls, okay? The souls of the dead were celebrated during this time, those who had moved on, to, wherever we move on to after this life. And then, the sun made its way down to its low point of power at the winter solstice. It's at 23.5 degrees south latitude at this point in time. And then there was another Sabbath holiday celebration in the ancient world. It was they celebrated the midpoint of winter. Aquarius was the middle this house that they celebrated the midpoint of, and this was known as Imbolc, Imbolc, or in later traditions it was called Candlemas. And that's around February 2nd. This was a time of making predictions for the coming season of life, because you're getting ready to ride out the winter. The last month of winter is on the way, and it's a time for setting your intentions. That's why around January, we set our intentions for the coming year. We make our New Year's resolutions. Then around Groundhog's Day, February 2nd, that's prognostication time, right? To predict, well, how what's the last half of the winter going to be like? Are we going to have some nice weather so we can get a jump on planting the crops, in a so-called early spring? So we get a jump on the sun and the season of life and planting and life, That's what that time of the year was all about. And this was an air sign, and it's a more mercurial time, a time of pondering and thought, and possibly even future prediction, which is always about the mind, So it was ruled by an air sign, which has to do with mental abilities. Aquarius is. So those are the 4 fixed houses, and their midpoints are celebrated by these Sabbats. But again, the time period we're talking about is 1/8 of the year. Okay, it's about a 1/8 period when it comes to the year. So in other words, if you overlap these two crosses, the minor cross of the solstices and equinoxes that separates the year into its seasons, and then what you would call the major crosses of the 4 fixed houses of the zodiac that split these seasons in two, and you draw a line connecting, through their midpoints. Okay, which would mean the Sabbats, the midpoints of each season. You now have the year divided into 8. The season that we're talking about is the first house of the zodiacal year, Aries, and the first half of the second house of the zodiacal year, Taurus. So it's from the beginning of Aries to the midpoint of Taurus on the zodiac, which forms 1/8 of the year. This season, which is half of spring, was referred to in the occult world as the season of sacrifice. This is when blood rituals would be conducted and offered as a sacrifice to the sun god and the earth goddess to ensure a bountiful growing season, so that there would be a bountiful harvest during harvest season to sustain any given society on the earth through the dark period of fall and winter, when the sun was in the southern hemisphere and crops did not grow in the northern hemisphere. This tradition was usually done through animal and human sacrifice in the ancient world, and it continues in the modern day in the form largely of human sacrifice offered at very specific dates and times of the year. And we can even just put forward a few of these, and there will always be people who will say, oh, this is all just confirmation bias. You're looking for bad things that happen during this time of the year and, trying to get that to validate your so-called theory. This isn't a theory, ladies and gentlemen. I don't really care whether anybody wants to dismiss it out of hand. I'm telling you, this is what these people believe in. That's their belief system. That's their belief system. Whether you want to accept it or not doesn't make a difference. That is what a lot of occultists believe. Okay. And they act upon that belief system. And many of these horrible, tragic, horrific, negative events do occur during this time of the year. I would suggest that this is not just a coincidence, that this is something that they are doing according to their belief system. When you see how many specific events are connected with mass killings of children and also synchronistic or synchromistic, symbolic events that have to do with the goddess, that have to do with the earth herself, okay? We'll look into these and just briefly comment on one or two of them or on a few of them. And I think you'll get the picture in mind of that this is actually real. This is taking place. It's not an imagined pattern, okay? It's something that people who have a sick, twisted belief system regarding why they have to do this stuff to appease a sun god and an earth goddess, okay? choose this particular time of the year and conduct these mass rituals of bloodletting. So, we'll start at recent history, okay? Not even going back into the ancient world, just the time of the birth of this country, around the beginnings of the birth of this country. You had the beginning shots of the American Revolution at Lexington and Concord. This happened on April 19th, 1775. Now, why do you think the British chose this point to start really turning up the heat on the American colonies and force their hand at this point in time? It's not just an accident. They chose this time period because this is the season of sacrifice. It's right in the middle of it. Right in the middle of it. They love this time period. They love April 19th and 20th in particular. You'll see these dates repeated throughout, this pattern that we're going to unveil here, that we're going to unfold, I should say. The riots in Baltimore in 1861 happened on April 19th, the anniversary of the battles of Lexington and Concord. 13 people killed. That's another symbolic number. They love the number 13. You look at the last two shootings in Fort Hood, the combined death was 13 combined deaths, 9 the first time, 4 the second time. It's as if, we didn't complete the right number the first time. We have to go back there and get 4 more so we can have our nice rounded number of 13, a solar symbol, the sun plus the 12 houses of the zodiac. They love that number. The sinking of the Titanic, April 14th into April 15th, 1912. Okay? Now, people will say, isn't that just a coincidence? It happened in April. I don't think it is, because the sinking of the Titanic was done as to directly take out one of the only people who really could have stood in the way of the dominance of the Rothschild dynasty in the early 1900s. And that was John Jacob Astor and the Astor family. And John Jacob Astor, who was one of the people who wasn't going along with the full agenda of the Rothschilds during the early 1900s, and who was a wealthy industrialist here in the United States, I believe they took the Titanic out just to take him down. And you think that they wouldn't sacrifice 1,500 souls to take out one of their main competitors, one of the people who could have challenged their total full spectrum dominance? I think you're extraordinarily naive. You're about as naive as somebody who thinks they wouldn't take out 3,000 souls, to get their agenda advanced in the Middle East, to get the resources they want in the Middle East on 9/11. Okay? That, anybody who thinks that these psychopaths aren't crazy enough to do something like that, aren't bloodthirsty enough to do something like that, very, very naive person.
You're not crazy about the Titanic either. I did, over the years, I've done broadcasts on this every year. In fact, that was the show I was going to, ironically, that was the show I was going to do last night. Had I not had my little hospital stay yesterday, it would have been on the Titanic, and it would have been about the conspiracy involving the Titanic. And when you look into that, you can't tell me. As soon as you start researching it, ladies and gentlemen, you'll see he's not crazy. Mark's not just pulling this out of his rear end. In fact, go look at my archives. Over the years, through right around April 15th, either on April 15th or the 14th, or within a day or two around there, I've always done broadcasts on it. Go back and listen to them, and you'll see the ample evidence. J.P. Morgan owned the White Star Line. Case closed. Mark, floor is yours.
Yeah, we can continue with a few more examples. The assassination of Martin Luther King. See, they love to do ritual killings of individuals who are acting as a rallying point for the masses of people, and who people are really starting to listen to, who are having a real big impact. They call this the killing of the king ritual. You could look this up and study this ancient dark alchemical ritual known as the killing of the king. It represents the killing of sovereignty. It represents the killing of hope. It represents the killing of morality. It represents the killing of natural law. Symbolically, okay, they choose a person who is being rallied behind by people who are standing up against the establishment. John F. Kennedy, while not assassinated during the time of the season of sacrifice, it was a killing of the king ritual, as was the killing of Martin Luther King. And again, you have resonators, the king, Martin Luther King, not an accident that that he's named that and they decided to kill him during the season of sacrifice. April 4th, 1968, right in the middle of the season of sacrifice. You have Kennedy acting as a resonator. Kennedy, his whole, the people all around him, he called Camelot, symbolically. This is a resonator for King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table in ancient legend. So again, that was a killing of the king ritual. It happened on a pyramid. Dealey Plaza's layout is a pyramid, right? As the motorcade was ascending the right-hand side of the pyramid with the missing capstone, that's when he gets the headshot.
Yep.
Not an accident, highly symbolic, highly occult, high occult symbolism involved in the whole thing, and then the subsequent cover-up and the magic bullet theory. Waco, we brought that up earlier, April 19th, 1993. Now we're going to get into much more modern examples of blood sacrifice rituals during the season of sacrifice. The Oklahoma City bombing, April 19th, 1995. The massacre at Port Arthur, Australia. And again, there is another killing of the king ritual. Arthur, Port Arthur, King Arthur. Okay? April 28th, 1996. The Heaven's Gate cult suicides in San Diego, March 26th, 1997, at the beginning of the season of sacrifice. Again, Heaven's Gate, there's that resonator with the divine again, the king, heaven, the gates of heaven, I would suggest this is about destroying the gates of heaven, closing the gates of heaven through death, okay? Mass death. And obviously, trauma-based mind control, involved there without any question. Clearly, all of those people were under some heavy-duty CIA mind control. The West Side Middle School Massacre. Again, they love killing children during this time of the year in Arkansas. March 24th, 1998, the beginning of the season of sacrifice. Here we have some goddess symbolism, the Columbine High School shootings, April 20th. Again, April 19th and 20th, they love these dates, right in the middle of the season of sacrifice. And April 20th is also the birthday of Adolf Hitler. So April 20th, 1999, the Columbine. And now you have goddess symbolism interjected as well. Again, one of the names of the goddess is Columbia. Okay, and that means the dove in many ancient languages. The dove is the white symbol of the goddess, the dove, the bird of peace. Okay, so again, bloodletting. A lot of times you'll see doves used in ancient sacrifice rituals as well. It's the spilling of blood. It's the killing of the goddess. It's the killing of care. It's the killing of peace.
Mark, I'm going to pause us right there
sure.
because at the top of the hour break is going to sneak up on us.
Yep.
When we come back in on the other side, we'll recap the list and then pick up right there at Columbine. As I said, ladies and gentlemen, this is the season that they love to see bloodbaths. And all of this is not coincidence. The reason I am going over this is because it's that time of year, and if anything else happens this year, at least you'll have a better understanding as to what's going on. You'll have a background knowledge. You'll have a background base to understand why you see what's going on. Not the symptom to the problem, but the underlying problem itself. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Check out Mark's site, whatonearthishappening.com. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye from federaljack.com. It is the 11th of April, 2014. It is that time of year, ladies and gentlemen, the season of sacrifice. And I've been discussing what exactly the season of sacrifice is and the meanings behind it with my good friend Mark Passio from whatonearthishappening.com. Mark, go ahead and shamelessly plug your website and all your stuff really quick, and then we can get back into that list that we were discussing before we went into break of all of these massive events where there's massive amounts of death, or there's a death, in the case of like Martin Luther King, the death of a very prominent individual, but a trauma on a mass scale because it affected so many people. They all seem to happen around this season of sacrifice time period. And we were going down the list, starting off with Lexington and Concord, Baltimore riots, the Titanic, MLK's assassination, the Port Arthur massacre, Heaven's Gate, and then we ended up at Columbine, and I had to cut us off. So really quick, go ahead and give yourself a shameless plug, and then we can pick up there.
Sure. My main website is whatonearthishappening.com. I highly recommend for people to check out the podcast section. There's also a great videos section. There's probably about 18 videos up there. The first 3 videos, I highly recommend to people the videos that I've recently put out on natural law, the natural law seminar. If you listen to really nothing else on my site, that is the probably the most important and significant material to check out. So definitely be sure to check out those videos as well. The website, once again, is whatonearthishappening.com. And I do a live radio show myself every Saturday night, 10 p.m. on the Republic Broadcasting Network. So you can check that out as well. So to go back into some of these other rituals to wrap up this concept of the season of sacrifice, we had Columbine. Again, that's goddess symbolism. Kaloum, the dove, the sacrificing peace, sacrificing the goddess. That was April 20th, 1999. The beginnings of the mass ritual sacrifice called war, the Iraq War, the Second Iraq War, was started off with bombing campaigns on March 19th, the beginning of the season of sacrifice, the spring equinox, 2003, with the shock and awe bombings. And again, this is another reference. It's a phonetic allusion in the name that they gave this mass ritual to initiate the sacrifice ritual called war. Shock and awe is actually a phonetic variation of Shekinah. Shekinah is in the Hebraic tradition a feminine force that acts as the mechanism to drive us forward and ignite our will through care. And it was, again, this was another sacrifice to that feminine force, sacrifice of that feminine force, I really should say. Okay, so they always like to attack the feminine during these bloodletting rituals. Again, another example of the symbolic death or immolation or sacrifice of the goddess, the Virginia Tech massacre on April 16th, 2007. Virginia, the Virgin. Okay, Virginia Tech. Again, another mass school shooting. The Moscow metro bombings in Russia, March 29th, 2010. The BP oil spill. Again, here's another bloodletting ritual of the goddess of Earth. They're literally letting the Earth's blood out, okay? Opening up a vein of the Earth and letting it just spill out into the oceans. The BP oil spill. Once again, there's that date that they love, April 20th, 2010. The invasion of Libya for another mass sacrifice ritual called war, March 19th, 2011. How many times have we already repeated March 19th and April 20th and April 19th? They love these dates. Love March 22nd, another big one too. The Boston Marathon bombings of just last year, April 15th, 2013. And now 2 ritual sacrifices already, possibly a third. We had the Fort Hood shooting, and we had these stabbings in Pennsylvania, the mass school children stabbings right here in my home state out by Pittsburgh. All right. Again, the Fort Hood shooting happened at the very beginning of the season of sacrifice this year. 4 more people killed there for a total of 13. So then you had this mass school stabbing in Pennsylvania, and now we have this standoff in what is it? The state of is
Nevada.
it Texas? Nevada.
Yeah, out in Nevada, the Bundy Ranch.
Nevada, the Bundy Ranch standoff,
and they're referring to it as a new Waco.
Quite possibly. I think if the American public allow that to become a new Waco, I don't know whether we even deserve what is coming down upon us. After everything that we know this government has been doing, if people don't put that situation to rest by whatever means they need to put it to rest, okay, and get out there and support these people against a land grab, because that's all this is. It is a land grab for resources because they want to frack that land. That is what this is ultimately about. And we're just going to let the government just continue to steal unchallenged. It's a disgrace. This country is just an absolute disgraceful group of cowards, what we are becoming. I would suggest militias just need to get out there in mass numbers and defend that place, period. That's what really needs to occur.
That's what it looks like is happening. Part of me wonders if they're doing this on purpose to try to draw that out to create a bloodbath. If they know that they can elicit a response from the militias like that and bring militias out.
In a lot of ways, if not, what is the militia for? What is the ability to keep and bear arms in a distributed sense, which is what a militia means? And this is a good time to talk about the Second Amendment, actually, because a lot of people still don't understand this and still debate it when the people who put it in place were so clear about its intent that I don't know how anybody could have ever used more clear, precise, non-ambiguous language. Okay? The militia came from the ancient Latin term militium vulgarum. That is where militia is a truncated English word. This is one of the first things people do not understand. And you say militium vulgarum to people, and they'll look at you like you have 6 snakes growing out of your neck. They've never even heard the term before. Okay? It means the full strength of military power present everywhere, meaning diffused throughout the entire population. Just think about that. That is the actual translation of that Latin phrase where we get the term militia. Militia, again, is a truncated word in English. It comes from a Latin term that is truncated into a shortened English word. So the term militia in English means, literally, it is derived from the ancient Latin term militium vulgarum. Now, when we use the word vulgarum, now people hear the word militia, and of course they associate it with the military, and it is associated with the military. It doesn't mean that it is the military, however. It has associations with the military because the word militium in Latin means having to do with the military or on par with military strength. So it means equated to military might. That's what militium in Latin means, related to military strength. Then you tack on the word in Latin vulgarum to that term. Vulgarum, it's where we get the English word vulgar from. And the phrase vulgar Latin meant the type of Latin, the everyday colloquial style of Latin that was spoken everywhere throughout the Roman Empire. It means present everywhere, distributed throughout the whole. And if you just think about these two terms together, this is exactly what militia means. The founders intended for military strength, military capability to be present everywhere throughout the entire country, the entire nation. All of the people would be able to wield collective military power so that no standing military that might ever develop on American land could ever take over the people. And certainly the people would be in a position to defend themselves and their lives and their freedom and their property from oncoming attackers from foreign military. That's the reason this was put in place. When people say, what do you need an AK-47 or an AR-15 or an FNFAL in your home for? The answer is because the people need exact military equivalent power to the standing army that is in our presence, called the military and the police. Because once they have a tactical advantage insofar as they have better equipment and arms than the people, you have the conditions of tyranny in place already. So when people say, well, you think you should have an AR-15, does that mean you should have a tank? Yes. Yes, it does. It absolutely does mean that if the military has a tank, the people should have a tank. Should we have a B-2 bomber? Yes, the people should have B-2 bombers. Yeah, how about that? Should they have nuclear weapons? Well, if the military has them, then the people should have them. Okay? Once you let a group of people calling themselves a standing military of a government have superior weaponry to you, you're already in tyranny. You're already there. And the founders of this country clearly understood that. They clearly understood it.
And, someone would try to argue and say, well, I don't know about nukes because our founding fathers didn't have that technology. Well, maybe that ought to make us think about the technology that we use as weapons.
The founders would have immediately said, even in the modern times, first of all, they would have been abhorred to even see that we are allowing a standing military to be kept. That's unconstitutional on its face. Not that I put any, sacred nature to the Constitution, but they insisted that no standing military be kept by this country. Okay? They wanted the people to be the military strength. That's what they wanted to act. And if they needed to raise a standing army, it would be done for a specific purpose, a specific threat, and then it would be dissolved after that, not to be kept standing, because they knew that military and police forces were the number one cause of tyrannical conditions. The police constitutes a standing military in the modern world. The police forces of every single city, every single state constitute a standing military force that we have allowed to rise up in our midst among the people. And this is exactly what the founders of this nation warned the people about, and we don't want to listen. We don't want to listen because we want to still insist these ridiculous, namby-pamby, they're not even real people. I don't even know what they are, people who are anti-gun. I mean, you got to be kidding me. These are people who just love slavery. Now, let me just come out and just say it like that. I mean, if you don't think that people should be armed, the only kind of people that aren't allowed to be armed are slaves. And if you think people shouldn't be armed, you're a supporter of slavery. Now, how about that? Let's just say it just like that.
But Mark, we're sophisticated. We're a sophisticated culture. We're beyond that now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just have to be sarcastic.
So all of the actual ability to use force, okay, should be in the hands of people who are actually condoning violence, called government.
It's idiocy. It's really.
And they think that that's somehow legitimate.
It's
These
ignorance.
Clowns out there. These people are just clowns. They're absolute mental midgets. And they certainly never read the wise words of the people who tried to give us a tactical advantage for freedom in the beginnings of this country. They did their best to try to instill those ideas, but people just won't listen to them and won't read their original writings.
Just for the record, I'm down with citizens owning tanks and stuff.
Sure.
I mean, let's be honest.
I'm not even saying that in jest.
Neither am I. I'm down with people having tanks. I really couldn't. Look, if first of all, you wouldn't it wouldn't go as far as people having nukes in their backyard and stuff, because you would realize that, wow, maybe this is getting a little out of control.
That's a pretty over the top idea to ever have invented them to begin with.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like Einstein said, it's a hell of a way to boil water. Dude. You know what? Okay, we see how destructive they are. We don't need to use that. That's just bad. Why do you think nations don't use them on each other, really? Because they realize that even if they nuke another nation, it's probably going to come back and fall out on them anyway. And
essentially nuking themselves.
Yeah. I mean, that's what those weapons are. I mean, talk about weapons of mass destruction. That's like weapons of mass idiocy right there. Nukes in general. But yeah, I do believe people should have access to equal weapons and stuff. And I'm all down with militias. My only concern with the Bundy Ranch thing is, like I said, I wonder, because look, even though
they're trying to deliberately drive it to that.
Yeah, man, you know how they think. They are smart. I mean, I'm not saying they're smarter than us, but like you said, by far, these people are psychopathic morons to a certain degree, and not all of them are smart. Okay, they're not. They need some of them need handlers to help them tie their own shoes. Look at George W. Bush. The guy's a muppet. Okay, he really is. He needs his wife as his handler. That's what she is. Watch the interviews. You'll see.
Sure.
You'll see who the controller is in that family. Anyway, not all of them are intelligent, right? Not all of them are super smart, but I think that the ones that do the thinking ahead are intelligent enough that they could figure a way. How could we get the militia out there? So they go out there.
They're trying to press buttons.
Yeah, right. They know they're going to get the militia out there, and then when that militia, not that they shouldn't, everybody should go, but everybody has to be on point. Everybody has to pay attention to what the Bundy family wants, and they got to listen to these guys. They got to listen to them, and they just got to, whatever. I know the rancher has a set of rules for everybody going out there, and guys, you got to follow it seriously, and you got to be on point. Everybody's got to be looking around, make sure that the people that are, get to know the people that are around you. Try to sniff out the infiltrators, because I'm going to tell you what, it would not be beyond what they have done in the past already to send someone out there to try to start something. All you need is somebody firing at the cops once, and those cops will all return fire because they've been trained to do that. And once one of them fires, they all start firing. Okay, it happens in the military. It happens with police. Trust me, I'm telling you. As soon as one of them opens fire, the rest of the cops will open fire. Okay, it only takes one of them to respond to something they consider to be a threat. And then it'll be a bloodbath. So I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but it's a possibility because it's that time of year and they've done that type of thing before. These people do play chess on a 3D level.
See, if we don't wake people up in consciousness, there is going to be another Lexington and Concord. It's assured. That's what a revolution means. It means you go around on the great wheel of karma all over again. To revolve means you make another circuit. You make another big circle of karmic debt because you didn't get it done in consciousnness. We need evolutionary development in consciousness so that we get out of this circle. That's what evolve means. It means to unroll, to unfurl, to open up and let out. That's what evolve means. We don't want to just revolve and go around in circles. A physical revolution, while it may free us temporarily from shackles of tyranny, I don't see it as the solution. The solution is to stop participating in slavery. Stop doing the things that we're doing that are collectively holding up this enslavement system. See, that's the thing nobody wants to hear. They say, Mark, talk about solutions. Everything I talk about is the solution. Consciousness is the solution. The understanding of natural law is the solution. The understanding of the causal factors that led us into the condition of slavery is the solution. Changing your mind is the solution. Freeing your mind from illusory belief systems is the solution. But you know what the ultimate solution is? The ultimate solution is to not behave in the ways that support the slavery system. And no one wants to hear that. So in other words, what I'm saying is the solution lies in the desistance of action, the desisting of taking certain actions, not taking actions that we already are performing on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't lie in having to do anything new, to do new tasks. Okay? People think, well, we have to do this new thing that's never been done or tried. It's never been invented before. You don't need to do anything new. You need to stop doing what you're currently doing that is getting you the condition called slavery. When you stop doing that, then the condition called slavery will no longer persist. And that is, stop supporting the control system. Stop paying your taxes. Stop taking a job in the control system. Stop working for government. Anybody who has a job in government, you're part of slavery. I don't care what part of it you do. If you work for government, state, local, federal, doesn't make a difference what level, you're a supporter of slavery. And get as offended about it as you want to get. Get as offended about it, tough, whatever you want to follow that by. Okay? Use your imagination. Tough. Okay? If you are working for government, you support slavery, your own and everybody else's. So what's the answer? Quit your job is the answer. Stop doing that job. Okay? Stop paying into the income tax system, regardless of what might happen. I'm not paying into the income tax system. I don't care what you did to me. I'm not giving you a dime to support mass death and pedophilia. It isn't going to happen. I know what they're doing to children. Factually, definitively. Okay, I know what's going on behind the scenes. You think I'm going to participate in that and still try to call myself a moral individual? Not going to happen. And this is the problem. Too many people are cowards and won't step up and stop doing what they're doing to support this system of slavery. They're cowards. Cowards. Okay? The answer doesn't lie in having to do anything new, folks. Quit your control system job. I want to start a campaign somehow to get to the people who are awake to the control system that have a member of their family that is working in the control system. This is an idea I'm just starting to formulate. It's in the infancy stages of formulation in my mind. I'm just starting to talk about it with some other people. I want to start some form of a campaign that we propagate this through all internet radio channels, all alternative media channels. And it's a campaign. We set a date where everybody who is aware of what's going on in this world and wants to change it, any of them who has a family member who is in the police, the military, or the government, okay, in any capacity, supporting the slavery system, working for it, regardless of that's their only means of income, they can't put food on the table any other way, they can't pay their bills any other way, it doesn't matter. Does not matter. The people who are associated with them, engage them. We start engaging them and we set a time period of like 6 months to a year. And you tell them the whole time, I'm going to bring information to you about what you're doing, why it's immoral, why it's wrong, why it's supporting slavery. And you do that through a whole 6 month to a year period. And you tell them the whole time, I'm going to keep bringing you information, whether you want me to even tell this to you or not, whether you're comfortable with me telling this to you or not. Okay, I'm going to continue to talk about this. I'm going to continue to expose it to you. I'm going to continue to bring it to you, no matter how much discomfort it brings up, no matter how much uncomfortable situations it brings about in the family. And then you're going to set a date at the end of this campaign to say, if you will not leave this institution of slavery, you will not stop doing this activity. You have to do this with absolutely no support by me, your family member. I want to call it cut off the causers, the people who are actually causing the problem. We need to cut them off from our lives. We need to say to them, you're going to stop doing this system that is enslaving all of us, or you will have absolutely no emotional support from me, absolutely no physical presence. I don't want to be in your physical presence anymore. I'm disowning you as a family member. I'm disowning you as a friend. Now, how many people would be committed and willing to go that extreme on somebody that they know and possibly even care about? Very few individuals would. You want to know why? Because most of them are cowards too, that don't want to do this work of influencing other people. They don't want to get up in somebody else's face and say, hey, what you're doing is immoral. It's wrong. It's wrong. Okay? You are the one who is advocating violence. Violence. And say, if you're going to continue to advocate that position, you're going to have to do it without my presence and support in your life in any way. In any way. So how many daughters or mothers or wives or sisters, women would be the most powerful factor in this to the women within the sound of my voice. You want to step into your true power as a woman, as a female, as the sacred feminine embodiment? You take the information to the male people in your lives. Because let's face it, they're the control system. They're the control system. Without men actually doing the task of enslaving other human beings, okay, it's not going to happen. Men are the problem here. I'm not saying women's minds are, somehow not as screwed up as men's minds are, but ultimately when it comes down to it, if we're honest with ourselves, men do the physical task of enslaving people. Okay? They're the people you have to reach, the men in the police and the military. And the people who are going to be the most effective and powerful in reaching those people's minds are the women in their lives.
Well said,
there
Mark.
It's been said.
Well said. I'm going to cut us off right there because the break's sneaking up. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss the last powerful segment. If you go back in my archives, ladies and gentlemen, and you listen to the occult aspects of 9/11, I think it was about 2 years ago Mark and I did this. I think it was in 2012 we did it. The occult aspects of 9/11. We talked about how that day the sacred feminine was attacked. And even though it was not killed because their ceremony was not completed, and I urge you to go listen to the broadcast so you understand what I'm talking about. In fact, I have it up on YouTube. Just go on YouTube and type in the occult aspects of 9/11. It'll be on one of my Federal JackTube channels or my DTRH Radio Archives channel. It's on all of them, or at least 2 or 3 of them out of the bunch. You can watch the slides as Mark and I are talking, and you can see what he sent me images. And I'm going to do the same thing for this broadcast too when I put it up on YouTube. Mark's going to send me some images and stuff, and I'll put it up in there. But the attack on 9/11, it threw, even though it was not completed, it threw the balance of masculine and feminine off. And that's why you see this aggressiveness, this over-aggressiveness that you see since 9/11, this overbearing police state. Everything is force and death and destruction. There is no care. There is no more love. I mean, even the idea of love is attacked in any way, shape, or form, and it's all this just – it's been thrown out of balance. So to understand that on a little bit deeper of a level, I urge you to go listen to that broadcast. Mark and I put a lot of energy into that broadcast, and that was a hell of a broadcast. And I will actually be probably airing it here for the Truth Frequency listeners. I think it's like 2.5 hours, so I'm going to have to shave some off to fit it in with the time schedule. But if you go back in the archives over on federaljack.com, it's there. I believe, if I remember correctly, it was around the period of 9/11 in 2012, if I remember correctly. But you can't miss it. It says the occult aspects of 9/11. And it threw off this balance of masculine and feminine. And that's why, you see this. That's what Mark is talking about. And, when you talk about the sacred feminine and stuff, Mark, inevitably you're going to get called a New Ager. You're going to get that label. Look, I've told you, I've discussed this with you before. Every time you and I do a broadcast and I put it up on YouTube, I get at least one idiot who comments and says, and by the way, this is for you, idiot, who's going to comment on this YouTube version on an archive. Okay, there's always one that says, you guys are New Agers, dude. No.
I'm no more a New Ager than I am a politician. Let's put it that way. I don't think you can get any farther from that mindset than where I'm at. The New Age is another religion, and it's the religion of no action. It's the religion of the destruction of the sacred masculine, where the control system is the destruction of the sacred feminine. The New Age movement is the destruction of the sacred masculine, of right action in the world. They're all about standing down and trying to meditate your way to peace. Good luck with that. Best of luck with all of that, okay? Because without real world action, you're not going to see any change happen here. These people who are in control are absolutely willful and take action on a day-to-day basis and never stop taking action. And the New Age movement's just a religion to get people to stand down and not actually stand against these people and actually do something to change things. It isn't just about intending something and feeling the emotion and then you're magically going to get it. This is the bunk, nonsense New Age variant of the laws of attraction. The real laws of attraction is, did you care enough about truth to actually put the truth out there into the world? And then are people getting it? And are they acting upon it? And are they moral? Well, if they're engaged in moral activity, in moral behavior, then you're going to have truth. You're going to have order and freedom in society. And if people didn't listen to the truth and they're engaged in immoral behavior, because they're doing things that they have no right to do because they're causing harm to others by taking those actions, by taking people's rights away, by taking people's property away, by hurting people when they have no right to attack them or aggress upon them, then you're going, and it's the whole society is acting like that and has hence become immoral beings. You're going to have a society that degenerates into disorder, chaos, and enslavement, which is what we have going on right now. See, ultimately, you referred to our show on 9/11. Ultimately, the real destruction of the feminine in that ritual was the destruction of truth. Truth is a feminine force at work in our lives. It's that which we must open ourselves to receive. We have to align ourselves with the feminine, to be receptive to that which is. We didn't do that as a collective, as a people, as a society when it came to 9/11. Most people are still in absolute cognitive dissonance denial regarding the truth of the events of that day. And that's why we're going deeper and deeper into bondage. The more and more you keep refusing truth, the more and more you keep refusing that which is, the more and more you keep saying, no, I refuse to engage and look at what is. And this is what the New Age movement's all about. Not looking at what is, not looking at all the negative stuff that's going on in our world because, oh, that makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to be brought down. I want to go into a blissful state brought on by hours and hours of meditation and yoga, which are just pumping tons of, morphins and, endogenous morphins into my body, endorphins. They're called endogenous morphine chemicals, and that all that does is put somebody into a stand down state. Nietzsche called religion the opiate of the masses, right? Well, that's what the New Age movement has become. What does an opiate do? It calms you down. It nods you out. It makes you not active, makes you not actually get up and do things, That's all the New Age movement is. It's the new version of the opiate for the masses. It's the new religion. That's all. I'm against all forms of religion because I know what religion is. Religion is a dogmatic belief system that holds you back from the truth. And the truth that we need to awaken to is what's going on this planet is called slavery, and it needs to be ended because it's immoral, it's wrong, and the people who are conducting it have no right to conduct it, period. It's not legitimate. The idea of authority is not legitimate. What New Ager is going to come out and just say that, just like that? Find me one. You won't. You won't do it. Because what they are a bunch of sweet-talking cowards. What's so New Age about that statement? Is there anything New Age about that statement, folks? From day one, I came out and called the New Age movement a bunch of inactive cowards. From day one, starting to do this work. Just because I happen to say some of their ideas are valid and are true, doesn't mean everything that comes out of any New Ager's mouth is false. Who would make a blanket statement like that? There's a lot of people I don't generally agree with about their overall mentality and ideology that I could say this particular thing you're saying is true. But that doesn't mean I agree with your overall ideology, So just because I may agree with a few things that the New Age movement does generally talk about and put out there regarding consciousness, etc., doesn't mean I'm a New Ager. Nothing could be further from the truth.
But it's not their original concept either. So
exactly.
It's not
just them borrowing from an older tradition and putting it into their own words and terms.
Exactly. It's not like you stole it from them. They took it from somewhere else. They took it from the same place that you got it from. It's just they're twisting it for their own whatever.
This is another concept. There's nothing new under the sun. You hear this constantly in comments, on little comments by little boys and girls who are doing nothing. Okay? They're holding their private part in their hand. Okay? That's really what they're doing. Okay? And complaining about somebody else's work. When you type their name into a search engine and you know what comes back? Goose egg. Goose egg comes back. Okay? Because they're not doing a damn thing with their time. Zero. But they'll say, this isn't anything new. I've heard all of these ideas somewhere else. It's just all being put together and presented in, his style. No crap. You figured it out, Sherlock Holmes. There is nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new I could come here and tell anybody. It's all there. It's always been there. The truth... Congratulations, sir. You've discovered that truth has always been here. It is singular and eternal, and there's nothing you can do to eradicate it. All you can do is align your perception to it or not. That's what the phrase, there's nothing new under the sun, means. So of course there's nothing new in what I'm talking about. Nothing new. Don't expect any new material. There isn't. The truth is the truth and remains the truth. The end. For all eternity, whether you like it or not, no matter how much that wounds your precious little ego, little boys and little girls, get over it. You're here to align your perceptions to what is and stop thinking you're the arbiter of truth. You're here to see the world as it really is. That's what awakening is all about. It's not about meditating your way into a blissful drug-induced coma. okay, in which you stand down and take no action. It's about seeing the world as it is and coming to the accurate recognition that the condition that it is in is called slavery. And then, you know what your work is to do after that? End that condition. To end slavery is the great work. And you can only end slavery when you change the mind of the people who continue to conduct it. So that's what the work that we are up against to do is. It is to get into the mind of the people who continue to do the actions that uphold the condition of slavery and change their mind by an act of will. By an act of will. And you know what? When people hear that, they want to run into a hole. That's what the real great work is? You're telling me that's what I'm here to do? I'm supposed to influence the mind of other people by constantly talking to them, by constantly speaking the truth to them? Yeah, that's your work. That's exactly it. So my question is, who's doing it? Who's doing it? You know who's doing it? A piss in the pot. That's who's doing it. A tiny little paltry piss in the pot. A tiny fraction of humanity's doing that work. That's why slavery goes on unchallenged in this world. Because people are shirking that work. They're shirking the mission that they came here to do. They don't want to take personal responsibility. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to make things uncomfortable between them and all the idiots they're surrounded by. By speaking the truth forcefully and unapologetically in everyone's presence, regardless of what mental condition they're in, whether they're ready to receive it or not. That's what needs to be done at this point in time. We're out of time, folks. The house is on fire. We are out of time. In case you didn't take a look outside your window, in case you didn't take a look on your television screen or your computer screen, in case you haven't noticed, the house is on fire. The time the sweet talk is over. Over. You know, so to the New Agers out there, bottom line, you're cowards. Period. I'm not even going to breach the topic gently. You're cowards who have bought into a nonsense religion that has gotten you to stand down and not take any action against all the evil going on in this world. Period. That's what the New Age movement is. That's what it always has been. And I've told people this essentially from day one. Maybe not in those strong of words from day one. But once again, we're out of time, folks. The sugar talking is... I never sugar talk people, never, tried to give the truth to people with a candy coating. But I'm really stepping out past that now. And I'm going to get more and more hardcore, because we have to put this in straightforward, easy to understand language that the average person can grasp what they're hearing. Okay, forget jargon, forget trying to, make it palatable for the masses. You need to get up in people's face with this. That's what the right sacred masculine energy is all about. It isn't about trying to tell people, oh, the world is so wonderful, and there's nothing to worry about. It's all good. Just sit and meditate. Just sit and do some pseudo-spiritual practices, which are the abuse of those practices. When you're surrounded by evil, you're putting yourself in a cage. That's what it is. It's not the New Age movement. It's the New Cage movement. Be docile, little pet. Be docile, little animals. Go back in your cage and stay there. No need for you to come out here with the adults and take any action. That's what the New Age movement is. So, hey, folks, if I haven't made it clear enough, nothing will that I stand against the New Age community, the New Age movement. I'm not saying they don't have decent intentions. Their intentions are misguided. They are deceived. You are deceived if you're involved in that movement. It's teaching pseudo-spirituality, not real streetwise spirituality. and you need to get out of that last cul-de-sac before the true alchemical spiritual gold, which is what real spirituality is about, which is about understanding we're in a condition of slavery. That's immoral. It needs to end, and we're the people who are going to end it. That's what being a spiritual being is all about.
Well said. It's like I end every broadcast with: the solutions to our problems are an inside job. That's exactly what I mean.
There it is.
Stop looking to outside sources to be your Superman and be your own Superman. You don't need to have some schmuck in a pair of tights and a cape come up, or a suit. I'm from your government. You be your own hero. If everybody started to adopt that attitude and had more personal responsibility with things, this crap would end tomorrow, and it would literally change overnight, because the way everybody thinks would change overnight, and everybody would stop tolerating this. And then
that's right.
The powers that shouldn't be wouldn't have any more power, because their power is really false.
It's from us.
Yeah,
it's from us.
It's our minds that give them power. Once we realize that they're not really the powerful ones, like, it makes me wonder what kind of stuff they were, movie people throw inside. When you watch the horror movie Freddy Krueger, he was this big bad, oh my God, all powerful force. He could get the teenagers, except if they didn't fear him and they didn't give him any power. And then what happened? He became insignificant. Right. Exactly. And that's how these people are. They are like, if you want to look at it like Freddy Krueger. Don't give it any power. Don't buy into it. And all of a sudden their facade of control goes poof.
And don't help or partner with anybody who is playing into that system. You have to make it known. I stand against this system of control. How many people out there listening know a cop? How many people out there know an active duty soldier? How many people out there know somebody who's working in the banking system? How many people out there know people who are working for government in some form or fashion? You need to get up in their face. It isn't about being timid, folks. It isn't about saying, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to rattle the cage. I don't want to get up in these people's face, because that's going to cause a tense situation. That's what the New Age movement's teaching people, to behave like that, not to do any of those things. Just let it be calm. It's all about being calm. Well, you could imagine what I think about that position regarding being calm. You know what you could do with calm.
Yeah, we're beyond being calm.
Yeah.
I think it's time to
That's what the Crown wants to put out there for people. Yeah. Stay calm and carry on, Yeah, no.
Yeah. I think everybody needs to, get agitated and get pissed off, not be afraid to talk to people. And by the way, this actually coincides. I have two questions, because I just looked at the clock. We have 8 minutes left. Sure. I got two questions that I acquired over the course of the broadcast. One of them was about the military dog tag things, which that actually coincides with this. And then the second question was, what do you think about the April 15th blood moon thing coming up next week? Do you
think there's something to watch? Because when the Earth's umbra, comes over the moon and creates that reddish glow, there's absolutely no question that occultists will see that as a sign. We'll see that as symbolism for bloodletting. So this is a time period. I'm telling you, April 19th is the date to watch, personally. I will say April 19th and 20th is the date to watch. It always is. But April 15th, the lunar eclipse certainly will also be a time period to watch, and the time in between that segment. If something's going to go down, I'll make the prediction it will happen in that time period. If something larger than has already occurred in this year's season of sacrifice, you want to watch that time period between that blood moon lunar eclipse event and April 20th for sure.
Yeah, that was a good point. I had that written down, and the other thing was the dog. Let me see. The dog tag thing. And we were talking about the cops and the military. Me being in the military myself, I know. And we have dog tags, and you don't think about it. It's like a nickname, and you're in the military. It's like, I earned my dog tags. I went through boot camp, whatever. You don't really think about it, Mark, until later on.
Calling you their animals, calling you their pets.
Yeah, I thought about it. I was like,
actual tags that would be put on a pet. And people can't see the symbolism. It's right in their face. How much more could it possibly be in somebody's face than that? I've told people when I was involved in dark occultism, not one higher level dark occultist that I ever encountered in all my years in Satanism, dark Luciferianism, Setianism, all of those traditions, not one dark occultist ever to me or to any other occultist in a ritual location or a gathering spot ever did I ever hear them use the term police or military. Ever. Not one time. The only terms that they would ever use for these groups of people were our pets or our dogs. That's it. That's the only time. I didn't understand what they were talking about for probably months. And I would just go along and nod my head like, yeah, mm-hmm, yeah, mm-hmm. And what are they talking about? Our pets, our dogs. And here, the whole time, somebody finally clues me in. They're talking about the military and the police. Months after my involvement with these groups started, I didn't know what they were talking about. And I would just nod my head and go along because I didn't want to look stupid. I didn't want to look like I didn't understand them. Yeah, that's their name for the people in those institutions. Our dogs or our pets. And that's the only thing I ever heard any high-level dark occultists refer to them as during my whole years of involvement in the dark occult.
Oh, and by the way, to talk about that, if you go back and listen, 2011, I believe it was 10/28 of 2011, if I remember correctly. For some reason, I remember the date. Mark and I did a broadcast. It was about 2.5 hours, and we got into the occult and Satanism and all that, the dark occult, I should say. And he explained in detail, why he had gotten into it, what he realized it was about, and that's why he left. And then he made it his life's mission to, wake everybody up. But you have to go listen to that broadcast because he explains in detail. We only have like 4 minutes left, so we definitely don't have enough time. I wish we did. But he explains in detail. I'll have to re-broad this and re-air it for the listeners here in Truth Frequency because it was an older interview I did with you, Mark. But he goes in detail about the application. And when you were talking to me, and I was like, wow, man, that thing sounds as detailed as the one I had to fill out for the FBI when I joined the military. It's like a 30-page application.
It's probably much, much more in-depth than that because they ask you about your innermost thoughts, the people that you consider influences in your life and why, how you think about certain, ideologies in the world. They go into depth of they pick you apart ideologically. It is a psychological test. It's a psychological screening process. They want people with certain characteristics and tendencies. And if you don't fit that description, they don't move you forward. They want psychopathic individuals. People with psychopathic tendencies. And I was a person with psychopathic tendencies in my late teen and early 20s years, without any question. And it took me years of hardcore suffering and being at the depths of consciousness and the depths of unconsciousness, I should say, for natural law to beat on me hard enough till I finally came out of that state after years of being in that state of delusion and mind control. But I'll tell you what, when I sprang forward a lot harder and faster than most individuals ever do. That's why I believe very firmly, the idea of being lukewarm is the worst place to be. You want to be at the extremes. You want to either be at the deepest, darkest places in the psyche, or in the highest places of the psyche. And often one place can lead to the other. That's the danger of being at a high point in consciousness. It can turn around real quick. You can go in the other direction too. You can't really go back to sleep entirely, but, you can fall from the path. But it also works the other way. Sometimes the people who have been in the deepest, darkest places can rise to the heights as well because of what they've been through and the evil that they've seen. And I've seen it, folks, firsthand. And I'm telling you, I wasn't even at the heights of that level of evil because I was only involved in very low levels of dark occultism by my own admission. I'm not telling you I was involved at the apex of these societies, or orders. I was an introductory initiate, you might say, a neophyte of sorts. But I got a peek in the door. I got a peek backstage, so to speak. Let's put it that way. And what I saw straightened me out.
You got enough of a peek that you were like, what the hell?
Yeah. I realized the world was something drastically different than what I thought it was. Drastically different. Most people never have that perspective of experience, though, unfortunately. See, that's why I try not to judge people too harshly in that regard, because I know they haven't been through the experiences I've been through.
That's why you're a good teacher, Mark, because...
Well, that's why I try to be as patient as possible in explaining this in often meticulous detail. So really, if you want to understand the perspective I'm coming from, you have to go and listen to the podcasts.
Yeah,
I can't stress that enough. Don't listen to them out of order. Don't just go to the most modern one because it's the most recent. You're going to be lost. You have to go to number one, and you have to work forward in order and just invest the time. You will be rewarded on the other end of that investment of time and attention. You will be. Okay, I can't prove that to you now if you haven't started, but all I can tell you is you do that investment of time and attention, you will be richly rewarded on the other side with an accurate understanding of what's really going on in this world.
I can totally 100% agree. Mark, we are out of time. Thank you so much for coming on tonight, brother.
Popeye, always a pleasure, my friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, as I tell you every night, and as Mark and I were trying to drive home tonight in detail, the solutions to our problems are an inside job. You are your own hero. You can solve almost all, if not every single problem by yourself. Okay? Look to yourself. Look within yourself. And you will find the answer. I love you all. I'll see you all again Tuesday. We're out of here.